Welcome back with a smiling face. Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. Behind the Closed Doors. Episode 5. CH39. Eliza POV. It's been so long since I've sat on the Queen's chair with a purpose. It's been years since any Pax has been invited to the kingdom. As I sit here twirling my hair around my finger, getting lost in thought, there is only one thing that keeps coming to my mind: what are they waiting for? Being frustrated is never a good thing, and the longer they wait the more frustrated I get. What have they got to lose? They are low-class wolves and a grandson I have never met, nor do I want to now. He has every right to claim the throne and I will gladly give it to him, if he gets rid of his mate. And keep the kingdom fox free. What are you doing in here? Mario asked as he came in. Well, I haven't used this chair in years, so I thought I will use it now. Use it for what, Eliza? Mario asked and raised a brow at me. You know where I come from, Mario, and you still chose to love me despite my past. From an Omega to a Queen is a very high jump, and I'm not about to lose my place or give it up to a fox. Mario walked closer until he was standing right in front of me. Why do you hate foxes so much? And I want the truth, Eliza. I looked at him and I couldn't decide on whether to tell him or not. I finally took a deep breath and decided on the truth. I told him my story and I thought that he would walk away or worse, leave me. So you have fox blood in your family and you never even thought of mentioning it to me. Mario said, and he looked more disappointed than angry. We lost our son because of this, Eliza. He just had to play that card. I could feel my anger rising and all sense walking out the door. At least he wasn't hunted down and killed, Mario. I gave birth to him and we made a decision that it is going too far. That he was losing control, and wolves started fearing him so much that they left. That is not the point, Eliza. He would have been king, his fox would have been under control, we would have still had our son and grandson. Mario said, and I could hear the sadness and defeat in his voice. I will not give up this throne for a prince that knows nothing about being a king and a fox whom I hate so much. You don't even know if she is a fox. Her mother was one, Mario. How much more proof do you need? I shouted and got up from my chair and went to stand in front of him. I could feel my anger rising. I looked at him and took a step back as if he struck me. Why are you defending her when I just told you my story? I asked. She is just a child, Eliza, and she has been through hell and back. Don't you think that if she wanted to do anything she would have done it by now? Get out, Mario. Just leave me alone. If you want to defend her, then be my guest, but don't expect me to stand with you. I said and turned around, walking to the window, not caring if he stayed or left. I never knew that loving someone so much that you will give and do anything for them and then they disappoint you hurts physically. I am a queen and I will stay queen if I have my way, and try I will. Zanian POV. It's been a week since Dalia gave birth and we haven't seen her much. She is too busy with the babies and sleep. She said that they are quiet during the day, but at night it's like they just can't sleep. I'm currently in the room with Crystal trying to come to some agreement, but failing. I have no idea what to do. I mean, if we do something then we are wrong, and if we do nothing then we will be cowards. Let's just wait until after the babies are born, then we can make a decision, but as a Paxanian, I don't want anyone to get hurt, Crystal, so what if we do this without them? Crystal shook her head at me and got up from the bed, walking over to me. She put both hands on my shoulders and smiled softly at me. We have a Paxanian and all of them would give their lives for you, and they made that decision the day they accepted you as their alpha. So we are not doing this alone. I looked at her and nodded my head. I have nothing else to say, and I don't feel like starting a fight, so I just nodded my head and kept quiet. I put my hands on her belly and felt the baby's kick. How much longer? I asked her. Well, I don't know, because my brain says 2 days, but my body is saying longer. I groaned and hung my head. When I looked at her, she started laughing at me. Why are you laughing? Zainian, my water just broke. She said, and now she is not laughing, she is looking at me dead serious. I looked down and saw her standing in a pool of water, and might I say it doesn't smell very pleasant. I just stood there frozen. I have no idea what to do. Zainian, hospital now! Crystal shouted and broke me out of my trance. I picked her up, ignoring the wetness, and speed walked to the hospital. Jeff took one look at us and said, "Take her to room 1, her bed is already ready." I looked at him and walked off with him following on my heels. I put Crystal down and she screamed. I had to cover my ears for a second. Jeff started working and Crystal grabbed my hand and squeezed. Her strength made me jump and I tried pulling my hand free, but she just wouldn't let go. Crystal POV. Get these things out of me! I shouted, and it feels like my whole body is on fire and I'm being torn apart from down there. I don't know if I should scream or cry or just faint, because right now it feels like I want to do everything and nothing at once. I felt a cramp and I felt like pushing, so I did. I grabbed Zainian's hand and heard Jeff say, "If you feel like pushing, then push." I was gripping Zainian's hand so hard I think I heard a pop, and it was confirmed when I heard him groan and bent down. I gave a push and it was all over. I heard the baby cry and within the next 2 minutes I felt like pushing again. The door opened and Delia came in. She ran to Jeff's side and took my baby and Jeff got back to work. When it was all over and I had both babies in my arms, my whole world came together, and at that moment I knew I would do anything to keep them safe. The first girl has silver hair and green eyes, and the last one has black hair and blue eyes. They might be twins, but they will have their own personalities and they will be so different. What is their names? Zainian asked and looked down at me with so much love that I actually started crying. I looked down at my girls and said, "The dark-haired one will be Hazel and the silver-haired one will be Isabella," I said and looked at Zainian. He kissed my forehead and whispered, "Perfect." Jeff kept me in the hospital for 3 days before he let me go home. My babies are healthy and very strong and they are beautiful. Tracy finally showed me the nursery and I was shocked into silence. Everything is pink and purple and the cribs are one pink with flowers and one purple with the moon and stars. It looks like the galaxy. "This looks absolutely beautiful, Tracy," I said, and she just smiled at me. She took one baby from me and walked into the room. We put the girls down so that they can sleep and I left to go find Delia. Her boys has been crying non-stop. I walked into her home without knocking. I didn't even have to guess where she is because the boys are still crying. I walked into her room and found her holding both babies trying to rock them. "You need some help, Dee?" I asked and stopped in front of her. She looked at me and she looks exhausted. She handed me Leo and as soon as I took him he curled up in my arms and he stopped crying. With his small hand he grabbed my shirt and clung to me. Delia looked at me and just gave a sigh. Tristan is still crying and she looked at me hopeless. I moved Leo to make space for Tristan and the same with him. As soon as he was in my arms he clung to my shirt, curled up and stopped crying. Delia looked at me and threw her hands in the air. "What do you have that I don't?" she asked and fell onto the bed. I stood there holding the boys for about half an hour until I was sure they were asleep before I put them down in their cribs. As soon as I put them down they woke up, so I put them both into one crib and took my shirt off, putting it between them. They both grabbed my shirt and fell asleep almost immediately. I walked back to Delia in just my shorts and when I walked in she gasped and asked, "Where is your shirt?" I laughed and said, a man will be a man, doesn't matter how small they are. Delilah looked at me shocked and asked, "You took your shirt off for them?" "Well, when I put them down they woke up, so yes, I took my shirt off for them and they grabbed it and fell off to sleep again." Delilah looked at me funny, so I grabbed her hand and pulled her to the boys' room and made her look. She looked down and then looked at me and said, "Well, I'm keeping that shirt." I laughed at her and didn't realize Jeff came in until he said, "Really?" and he walked out. I greeted Delilah and walked out. I paused in front of Jeff and said, "Your boys will one day get a lot of females out of their clothes if you are not careful," and walked off. I am not bothered about the fact that I'm walking in just my bra, but apparently some male wolves are. They stared at me, some just looked away and some kept staring until I heard Zanian growl, and then every head turned away from me. I looked up and Zanian was already busy removing his shirt and handing it to me. I could see questions in his eyes and just smiled at him. I walked into the house and it was quiet, almost like everyone left. I looked at Zanian and raised a brow. "I chased everyone out, they made too much noise and the girls are sleeping." I laughed at him and walked to the kitchen. "I feel like cooking tonight, so I took out some pasta and mince, my favorite dish, and some steaks for the men." Zanian stayed to help me and within 2 hours dinner was ready and the table was set. It felt good to sit with everyone and eat as a family. I took something out for Spike as well, so I will take it to him a bit later. Everyone was talking about the new babies and Zane was complaining because Zanian said they have to be outside more and the top of the house is off limits. Zanian POV: since the girls were born, Crystal barely had time for us. She is always busy running up and down, so today I'm going to do something for her. As I sit in my office, I think about something to do for her that would help her relax. Spike came out more, but he isn't ready to meet the pack yet, so he just comes into my office and under the house. "What do you think I should do, Spike?" I asked and looked over at Spike. He put his chocolate milk down, wiped his mouth and looked at me. "Why not take her on a picnic? Some place quiet and romantic? Set up candles in a blanket, watch the sunset, take her for a run." Spike looked at me and rolled his eyes, as if it is the easiest thing to do in the world. Little does he know that this will be our first date. "Do you have a map of the area?" Spike asked and I handed him one. He looked at the map closely and pointed to a spot that looks like a clearing not far from here. "Take her there, it is open, close to a waterfall, and the field is covered in flowers," Spike said, and I could see his excitement surfacing. "Are you sure?" I asked. "Yes, so you have time to get everything ready and I will have a nap. Good luck, and I hope she enjoys it." Spike got up and left the office, going back into his little home. I got up and closed his door and moved the bookcase back. Just as I sat down, my office door swung open and Crystal came in. She looks exhausted. She flopped down on the couch and closed her eyes for a moment. I got up and walked over to her, sitting down next to her. I take her feet and put them on my lap. As I massaged them, she moaned softly. "Love, you look exhausted," I said and waited for her to say something. She opened her eyes and looked at me. "Well, if this goes on, then I will not have any shirts left. Delilah's boys got me out of my shirt again, and I cannot understand why. Maybe it is our smell. Delilah is their mother, they should like her smell and fall asleep with her shirt, not mine," Crystal said, and the way she pouted made her look like a small child. I didn't say anything about the date because I want it to be a surprise, but I don't want her falling asleep. "I'm going out for a run later, will you please join me?" I asked. She looked at me and gave sight. "It will do you good to let Raven out a bit, it has been over 3 months since you shifted," I said, hoping she will give in. "Yes, I will go on a run with you, seeing that you are asking so nicely." Crystal moved her feet from my lap and turned around. She laid her head on my chest and a few minutes later she was sleeping. Zane POV I can't do this anymore. Babies crying in the house and babies crying outside, I can't even get a good night's sleep and sleeping during the day is very difficult for me. I feel like the Walking Dead. I said to Tracy and she just laughed at me. She on the other hand has been sleeping like a rock. It's not that bad, Zane. I mean, how come I can sleep and you cannot? Well, maybe because you are a woman, and women should be used to babies crying every hour. I said, and I know I sound rude, but I just can't anymore. Tracy turned around, looked at me and said, well then why don't you go and sleep with Tommy? He lives on alone and he is far from the crying. And she left. I groaned and fell back onto the bed. Great, now she is mad at me. I took a shower and went downstairs. Zanian is chasing everyone out again, because the babies are sleeping and Crystal too. I walked past him and into the kitchen looking for food, or anything that would keep me awake. Zanian came in and looked me over. What happened to you? He asked and I could hear the sarcasm in his voice. Well, try sleeping with 4 babies crying. Dalia's house is right outside my bedroom window, and the girl's room is right above mine. I said and kept searching the kitchen. What are you looking for? Zanian asked. I am looking for something that would keep me awake or I might just fall asleep while standing. I said and it came out wrong by the look on Zanian's face. He gave me one of those death stares and left. Just like that he left. I gave up in finding anything and then just walked out. I decided to run and train, until I pass out. By the 4th lap I've completed, the world started spinning and I felt sick, but I kept pushing myself. I completed my last round and ran back to the field. As Tommy came into view, the world started spinning again and the sickness returned. I stopped to catch my breath and the next thing I know I'm falling and everything went black. Zara POV I should go back. No, I shouldn't. It's been 2 months since I've seen Crystal or any of them and Tracy. I feel bad for leaving without saying anything. No one knew this and I didn't want anyone to find out, but I loved Donovan and after my sister died there was no one keeping him from me except him dying. I couldn't look at Crystal and not feel sad and heartbroken, so I left for a while. The last time I was there I found out that she is pregnant, so she should have given birth by now. I'm walking in the woods trying to decide if I should go back or not. If I go back things might never be the same, and if I don't go back I will be alone, and that is the last thing I want now, is to be alone. As I was walking I couldn't help but think about what they are going to do now that they know the truth. I have been to the kingdom and by the looks of things it looks like they are getting ready for war. What I just don't understand is, why would they lie about everything? Wouldn't it have been easier to just tell the truth and let the people decide for themselves? I wish Marina was still here and I wish Donovan was still here, but now I have Crystal and she is the only family I have left. I made up my mind and decided to go home. I can't wait to see the babies. When I asked her she didn't know the gender. I picked up my pace wanting to get home, because I have something to look forward to. When I got closer to the border my stomach felt weird, almost like I want to get sick. I took a breath and thought that maybe I have just been walking too much. I walked past the trees and looked at the scene in front of me. I sprinted over and shouted, but no one heard me, so I used magic and threw everyone away from each other. I took a look around and it was a mess. Zanian came running towards me and I could see the worry on his face, and following behind him was Crystal. Her belly is flat, so she definitely gave birth. What is happening? Zanian asked. I just came back and everyone was fighting. I tried shouting and it didn't work, so I used magic. Zanian took a look around and called a meeting. The men who were fighting got up and followed him, but what caught my eye is that they all look confused. As if they don't know what is going on. I'm so happy you are back. Crystal said and threw her arms around me. I hugged her back and it feels good to be home. Where are the babies? I asked her, not being able to control my excitement. Crystal grabbed my hand and pulled me along. Tracy Povey have no idea what crawled into Zane's food, but he has been acting strange for the last few days now, and it is not just him. I saw Jeff a few times and he didn't look so good. After what happened this morning with Zane, I decided to take a walk and hunt to clear my head, but before I left I stopped by the training field to talk to Tommy and asked him to keep an eye on Zane, and then I left. I was still hunting when I started feeling weak, like I can't breathe. My chest is too tight and the world is spinning. I grabbed onto the nearest tree I could find and just stood there trying to catch my breath. I looked up and realized that never in my life have I been sick, and what I am feeling now is Zane. I stumbled my way back home just in time to see Zane pass out. He was standing bent over and then he fell. I ran over to him and fell down beside him. He is sweaty and hot, and I mean like burning up hot. I shouted for Jeff and Tommy came running over to me. He picked Zane up and we walked to the hospital. I called Jeff again and he looks angry. What is going on with everyone? I asked myself as I look around me. I noticed most of the unmated male wolves looks angry. I looked at Tommy and he is also unmated, but he looks fine. Jeff cleared a bed and Tommy put Zane down and looked at me. Do you see anything different? I asked him. You mean every male wolf waking up on the wrong side of the bed? Yes, and don't you find it strange that every unmated male is in a bad mood? He looked at me and he looks lost in thought, and before he can answer me we heard growling and ran outside, leaving Zane with Jeff. When we got outside it looks like a battleground. Tommy shouted at them when he saw they are not sparring but fighting. No one even seemed to hear him. He tried pulling two males apart and all that got him was a hit in the face, so he let go and walked off to find Zanian. I was left standing here feeling scared and worried, when the wolves were thrown away from each other, landing on opposite sides of the field forming a perfect circle. I looked up and saw Zara, but I don't think she saw me. And just then Zanian and Crystal came running out with Tommy following them. Zanian POV, I called for a meeting and now I wish I never did. Talking to them is like talking to children, no one knows what happened, or what started the fight. I rubbed my temples and dismissed everyone from my office. I sat there trying to figure out what is going on when Zara came into my office and closed the door behind her. I'm sorry to disturb you, but I might have an idea what's going on. I looked at her, told her to have a seat. What are you talking about? I asked. Well, if you look at it, it's mostly the unmated male wolves that are aggressive, right? So, either there is a female on heat somewhere and they are frustrated, or you have a witch problem. I looked at her and thought about what she said. The female on heat I can understand, but a witch? We don't even have one in our pack. What do you mean a witch? I asked. Well, since you know the truth now and the king and queen don't know what to expect, they will try and bring the fight to you. It doesn't make sense. Shouldn't they be happy that we haven't done anything yet? Well, I could be wrong, Zanian, and it can just be a female on heat somewhere, but just be careful. Zara said and stood up from the chair. Are you leaving again? I asked. No, I think I'm going to stay for a while. Welcome home then, I said, and she just smiled at me. When she left I sat and thought about what she said, and it doesn't make sense. Why would a witch attack us? I shook my head and got up from my chair, walking over to the window and looking out. Everything seems to be normal now. I just think that everyone is having a bad day, I thought to myself. I slapped my forehead and grabbed the map on my desk. Scanning it over, I found the spot Spike pointed out for me and decided I will still take Crystal on a picnic. In the kitchen I found everything I needed and more. I packed a picnic basket and walked out of the house. No one saw me, so no one will ask questions. I followed the map to the clearing, and when I got there the breath was knocked out of me. Pink, yellow, purple, and blue flowers are growing everywhere. There is a small stream with a waterfall. The water's so clear I can see the stones at the bottom. This place looks like something that can only be found in a fairy tale. I set up the picnic close to the water, placing the lanterns in a heart shape with the blanket in the middle. I thought about candles, but the wind will just keep blowing them out. I stood back and admired my handiwork. It should be safe enough as I don't hear or see anyone. I ran back home, excitement getting the better of me. I can't wait to see Crystal's reaction. Crystal POV, they are beautiful, see. Zara said as she is looking down at my twin girls. I can't believe she is back and she is here to stay. The girls stirred, opening their eyes looking straight at Zara. They looked at her for a long moment before they started smiling. I wish I could know what they are thinking. I thought to myself. We stayed a little longer until the girls fell asleep again, and then Zara left and I went to take a shower. Zainian asked me to join him for a run, but with everything happening I don't even know if the run will still happen. After my shower I went down to the kitchen and grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge. I was just about to take a sip when Delia came in looking exhausted. I can't do this anymore, she said, and flopped down onto a chair and laid her head down on the table. What are you talking about? I asked in confusion. The boys just won't stop crying and I have tried everything. I even gave them your shirt, but that didn't work. Have you tried taking them for a walk? Yes, and it didn't work, Delish said, and she really looks defeated. I heard the girls crying, so I left Delia to go get the girls. Knowing they must be hungry, I fed them and took them down with me. Delia was still in the kitchen on her arms. I walked in and she lifted her head smiling at me. She held out her arms and I gave her Isabella. Come, they need sunlight, I said, and walked out of the kitchen. When we got outside we saw Jeff walking over with the boys and they are still crying. I gave Hazel to Delia and took Tristan and Leo. As soon as I took them they both stopped crying and just curled up into my shirt. Delia and Jeff both looked at me. Jeff threw his hands in the air and walked away. How do you do that? Delia asked me. I don't know, I said, and looked down at the boys. They seem so peaceful now, as if they never even cried. We sat on the grass for about 10 minutes when Zainian came up to me and asked, "Are you ready to go?" I looked up at him and nodded my head. Delia said she will look after the girls for me until we come back. Where are we running to? I asked Zainian and he just said, "You will have to wait and see." We shifted and Zainian took off running. I stayed on his heels, not knowing where he is going. We played around for a while and I can honestly say I'm having fun. Zainian slowed down and I ran into him, sending us both to the ground. Crystal, I heard in my mind. I'm sorry, I didn't watch where I was going and I didn't see you stopping, I said in my most innocent voice. Zainian got up and shifted back to his human form and pulled on shorts. He held out a shirt for me and said I have to shift. So I did and put on the shirt. Where are we? You will see in a second. He stepped behind me and put something on my eyes. I tried taking it off. Don't, it won't be on for long. I let him tie the blindfold and then he pulled my hand. Let me just tell you that walking and not seeing where you are going is not very fun. I'm so scared of walking into a tree or tripping and falling on my face. Don't worry, I got you. We are almost there, Zainian said, and all I could do was laugh. Remind me to blindfold you and lead you through the woods one day. I said with sarcasm dripping from my tongue. You can blindfold me anytime. Zanian said in that low husky bedroom voice of his, and that shut me up completely. I let him lead me, and a few steps later we stopped. Are you ready? He asked, and before I could answer he started removing the blindfold. You can open your eyes now, Zanian said, and stepped away from me. When I opened my eyes I gasped and covered my mouth looking around me. I have no idea where we are, but this is officially my new favorite place. The field is covered in wild flowers, and when I looked in front of me I could see lanterns. I looked up at the sky, and it's about 2 hours until sunset. I looked at Zanian not knowing what to say. We never had our first date, so I hope you like it, he said, and looked at the ground. I ran over to him and jumped on him, crossing my legs behind his back, and kissed him. This is perfect, I said, and kissed him again. We ate almost everything and just lay there on the blanket and talked about random things until the sun went down and the stars came out. Zanian pointed to random stars and made up stories about how they got to be stars, and I know he is talking nonsense, but I can't help being fascinated by his stories. He makes it sound so real. When you first got here I saw you looking up at the stars multiple times, even when you thought no one is watching. Why? Zanian asked, and I could hear the curiosity in his voice. How about I just show you, and you can see for yourself. Change your human yes for the eyes of your wolf and give Blaze semi-controls so that all your senses are heightened. Then close your eyes and look up at the stars. Zanian POV. Watching Crystal's reaction made everything worth it. It warmed my heart to know that something so simple can make her this happy. I regret every moment I've spent hating her and trying to get rid of her, but I will spend the rest of my life trying to make it up to her. Being here with Crystal and having her attention only on me is beyond what words can describe. As the sun is going down I couldn't help but stare at her. Her skin is flawless, but something about the sunset makes her skin looks like it's glowing. I did what she said and gave in to my animal side, and when I opened my eyes everything looked different and so clear. This is amazing, I said to Crystal and looked over at her. Her eyes have changed too. Now look at the stars and you will have you answer, she said, and turned her head away from me. I looked up at the stars and stared in amazement. I can see every single one of them and they are different colors. Now everything makes sense and I feel like I have just been introduced to a new life. I turned my head and looked at Crystal. I didn't know it could be possible, but every day that goes by I'm falling more and more in love with her, and I cannot imagine my life without her. You are the most beautiful woman I have ever seen, and I am so lucky to have you as mine, I said, and rubbed my thumb over her cheek. She brought her face closer to mine and I crashed my lips to hers, kissing her with every emotion I'm feeling. I pulled her closer to me until she was basically on top of me. She laid her head on my chest and whispered, "I love you so much." When we got home it was quiet except for a movie playing. When we walked into the house Dalia greeted us with a very big smile. "You look happy," Crystal said, looking at Dalia, which caused her to smile even more. "Well, I am, and you can have your girls back tomorrow," Dalia said. "What?" I asked. "Well, you see, Jeff and I tested something when you left. He took the boys and I took the girls. As soon as the boys are too far from the girls they start crying, and when they come closer they stop. At first we thought it's a coincidence, so we did it a couple of times and then everything made sense. Every time you've been with the girls they fall asleep with your shirt," Dalia said, and her excitement is like she just solved the world's most difficult puzzle. Crystal looked at me with a glimmer in her eyes and said, "Imagine if they are mates. How amazing would that be? They are babies, how can they know if they are mates?" I asked in a tone. Dalai looked at us and just said, "Well, you can have your girls back in the morning when they wake up." And she left. I pulled Crystal to me and whispered in her ear, "You can be only mine tonight without any interruptions." Kyle POV Zane, let's go already. I'm coming, just give me 2 seconds. Looking at my watch, I sighed out of frustration. Today of all days Zane chooses to be late. He knew about the meeting for days. "Hey babe, you have everything you need?" Lily asked as she came up behind me. Her beauty has me speechless every time, and it doesn't matter that I see her every day. I have everything I need except for Zane. He is taking his time. Lily just shook her head and smiled at me. She knows how frustrated I can get with Zane even though he is my brother. "I'm done," Zane said as he came down the stairs. I looked him over and slapped my forehead. I looked at him and asked, "Where is your shoes? You can't go to a business meeting wearing flip-flops." Zane looked at me and then at his feet and ran back upstairs. Lily burst out laughing, and for some reason I didn't find it funny. This is not funny. He is like a little kid that has to be reminded of everything. "Oh, come on, it is a little funny," Lily said and wiped her eyes. "You ready to go?" Zanian asked as he came down looking like the businessman he is, black suit tailored to fit him perfectly. "Yes, I'm just waiting for Zane. He forgot his shoes," I said and shook my head. Zanian walked past me and Zane came running down the stairs again. "Okay, I am ready now." The drive to the office was quiet. Zanian hasn't been in a while, so he has some catching up to do. Zane has a lot of paperwork that needs his and Zanian's attention, and I'm just going to help them. "Zanian, when are we going to talk about what happened when you and Crystal got taken?" Zane asked and leaned forward from the back seat. "When we know what we're going to do," Zanian said. "What do you mean?" I asked, interested in the conversation. Zanian rubbed a hand over his face and said, "We found out a lot of things and we have no next step yet, so we will speak to everyone as soon as we know what to do. If we react the wrong way, it might start a war," Zanian said, leaving me even more confused than I was before. No one knows what they found out, because they aren't talking to anyone, and the little we do know is not enough to fill in the blanks. Zane blew out a long breath and shook his head. "Well, maybe a war is what we need, to set the wrong right and bring back order," Zane said. I looked at him and asked, "You don't even know what they know and you are voting for a war? Do you even know whom the war will be against?" "Well, no, but I'm sure we will know soon," Zane said and looked at Zanian. "What makes you so sure?" Zanian asked. "Well, it's been over 4 months since you came back, and I saw you and Crystal talking in hushed voices a few times," Zane said, and I could feel the tension building in the car. I looked at Zane and said, "How about you just drop it for now and concentrate on everything you have to do today?" Zanian looked at me and I could see his trying not to smile. Zane huffed at me and moved back. Zanian POV I got a call late last night saying that I'm needed in the office today. Zane and Kyle would have been the only ones going in, but now I'm going in too. I don't know which way to go anymore. All my attention was on Crystal, my babies, and what we are going to do, and now work needs my attention. All the males have calmed down and are no longer aggressive. I took Tommy and went in search for something connected to witchcraft or a female on heat. We were out almost the whole day when finally Tommy picked up a scent that led us to a female in heat. She was hiding in a cave close to shore where the smell of salt is thick, making it a bit more difficult to smell her. Tommy stayed back because he is unmated and his wolf is trying to come out. I walked closer and saw a figure curled up in a tiny ball and shivering. She was a whimpering mess. I picked her up and soothed her before I walked out of the cave. I told Tommy to go home and get every unmated wolf away from the pack house. I saw his eyes flickering from gold to brown. I growled at him and told him to go home, and just like that he ran off. I looked at the girl I'm holding and she can't be older than 18, maybe 19. I took her home and put her in Crystal's old room knowing she will be safe there. Crystal said she will look after the girl and make sure no mail comes up. Zane has been getting on my nerves ever since he started asking questions. I can't give them the answers they are looking for when I don't even know what to do. If we tell them, we want to be able to tell them everything and not just some of it. We want to tell them what happened and what we are planning on doing, and to do that we still have a lot to figure out. I tried not to smile when Kyle put Zane on his place. Between the two of them, Kyle is a bit more mature even though he is the youngest. Zane still have a lot to learn. When you were at the office for that week, did anything happen that's important? I asked and looked over at Kyle. He looked at me and said, "Not really. It was mostly just meetings about the financial structure. Unnecessary costs, waste and salaries. You will find all the paperwork on your desk. Is there any new contracts?" "Yes, there are two, one for a new block of flats and the other for a gym. 4 offices is being rented out to them on the ground floor. Living in the middle of nowhere and having to drive a dirt road means my car is always full of dust or mud, which is fine because we mostly drive with the SUV. Pulling up to the building, I park the car and everyone gets out. As we walk into the building, people greeted us, some just nodded and some carried on with their work. My office is on the top floor, Zane's is just below mine. Waiting for the elevator, a woman approached me. "Hi, are you Zanian Black?" she asked. "Yes, I am," I said, half hesitant. She smiled at me and then handed me a big brown envelope with my name on it. I took it from her and she left. Zane and Kyle is looking at me with raised brows and I just shrugged my shoulders. We have wolves and humans working in this building. The humans mostly find me intimidating and the wolves just tries to avoid me as much as they can. Walking into my office, I closed the door behind me and looked at the stacks of papers on my desk. I rubbed my hands over my face and walked over to the window. I looked at the envelope the woman gave me and started to open it. I took the papers out and read through the first one. It is my mother and father's will. I sat down and read through it. When I turned the last page, there was a note: "The will came a week ago, so I sent you a copy. They left a few things for you, just let me know if you want it. Dad left his businesses for the both of us, so just let me know what you want to do. Zach." I read the note again and the will again. A knock on the door is what broke me from my trance. "Come in," I said and threw the papers into a drawer. Stacy came in and lowered his lashes at me. Groaning internally, I looked at her. "Welcome back, sir," she said in what she thinks is a seductive tone. "Thank you. How is my schedule looking for today?" I asked, ignoring her pout. She handed me a sheet of paper and I noticed that the top button of her blouse is open. "No meetings, no conferences, and no appointments." I looked up and said, "Please call Louis and ask him to be here by 3 o'clock. Stacy smiled at me and said, "A woman named Crystal called. She asked if you can phone her back." I took out my phone and dialed Crystal's number. "Zanian, OMG, I don't know what else to do." "Slow down, see, what do you mean?" "The girl, she is crying and she is burning up." I could hear the worry in her voice. "Okay, give me a minute and I will phone you back, love." I dropped the call and looked at Stacy. "Please call Zane for me and send him in when he gets here." She walked out and closed the door. Heat for a female can be very painful depending on their rank. A few minutes later, Zane came in and closed the door. "You called for me?" "Yes. Do you know of any woman in the pack that is gay?" Zane looked taken aback and just stared at me. I think Amy is gay, but we hardly see her. Why? I took out my phone and called Crystal. Where are you? I asked. I'm in the kitchen. Why? Okay, go outside and look for a woman named Amy. Tell me when you've found her. Zane was staring holes into me waiting for an answer, but he will find out in a second. I found her and she is not a woman, she is a girl. Okay, give her the phone please. Amy. Yes, Alpha. Can I ask you a personal question? Sure. Are you gay? It was silent over the phone for a second, then came a faint yes. I gave a sigh out of relief, and I'm sure she must be confused. Do you have a mate? No, not yet. Alpha, do you mind me asking why? I need your help. We found a female and she is on heat, but she is suffering. I just need you to give her release. I can't ask a male because he would end up taking advantage, so would you be able to help? Are you sure, Alpha? Yes, I'm sure. Speak to Crystal and she will take you to the girl. Zane POV. Zanian has lost his mind, and not just some of it, he lost it completely. I stood there listening to his conversation and I can just imagine how the girl is feeling. She must be blood red from blushing. Never before have I heard Zanian ask a girl these kinds of questions, certainly not about her. I couldn't help but stare at him like he has grown 3 heads. When he put the phone down, he looked at me and said, "The girl is in pain, I have to do something." Zanian, how can you ask someone to have S*X with someone else? I'm not holding a gun to her head, it's still her choice, Zane. Imagine how Amy is feeling now. Do you think she will be able to look you in the eyes again? Zane, get out and go back to work. Next time I will ask Tracy. That is all it took for me to change my whole attitude. I turned around and asked, "Is she going to help?" I asked and saw the laughter on Zanian's face. He smirked at me and just nodded his head. Never in my life have I been happier that a female will help out another female. I left the office and walked past Stacy. The way she is looking at me, it looks like she is ready to kill me. Zane, can I ask you something? She asked out of the blue, and I stopped dead in my tracks. I looked at her and I could see she is a bit uncomfortable. Sure. What is it? Is Zanian married? She asked and looked down at her hands. Not yet, but he has a girlfriend and 2 daughters. Why? She looked at me and I swear I could see tears in her eyes. She smiled at me and said, "I was just wondering." You're right. I thought to myself and left. She has been after Zanian for as long as I've been here, but I think she finally got the message. By lunchtime I was halfway through my work and I had about 5 cups of coffee. Kyle came in carrying 2 paper bags and I could smell burgers. I thought you might be hungry, he said, and handed me 1 bag and a huge chocolate milkshake. We ate together and I filled him in on what Zanian did and how he did it, and all Kyle did was laugh and shrugged his shoulders. Well, he cares and he knows how dangerous a male can be around a female in heat. Yes, but just imagine how Amy must feel. How would you feel if you were in her shoes? I asked and waited for Kyle to answer. He just looked at me and said nothing. Eat your food before it gets cold. I picked up my burger and started eating. Have you seen Stacy today? I asked Kyle. Yes, and she doesn't look well. Why? She asked me. Is Zanian is married? Kyle choked on his burger and started coughing. He looked at me and asked, "And what did you tell her?" I said no, he has a girlfriend and 2 girls. No wonder she's looking ill. You popped her bubble. Yeah, well, someone had to. We finished eating and Kyle left, leaving me to my work again. I can't wait to get home and fall onto my bed. Just the thought made me yawn and my eyes droop. I shook my head and told myself just 4 more hours. Crystal POV. Hush little baby, don't say a word, mama's going to buy you a mockingbird, and if that mockingbird don't sing, papa's going to buy you a diamond ring, if that ring is made of brass, mama's going to buy you a looking glass, if that looking glass gets broke, mama's going to buy you a billy goat, if that billy goat don't pull, mama's going to buy you a cart and bull, if that cart and bull turns over, papa's going to buy you a dog named Rover, if that dog named Rover don't bark, mama's going to buy you a horse and cart, if that horse and cart falls down, you'll be the sweetest little girls in town. I looked down at the girls and saw that they are fast asleep. I lay them down, and when I look up, Zainian was standing in the doorway. I didn't know you can sing like that, Zainian said. I looked at him and noticed that he is dressed in a business suit again. You going to the office again? Yes, there is some last-minute things I need to take care of and then I am all yours. Zainian walked over to me and kissed my forehead before walking out. I gave a sigh and stared after him. Since he came home yesterday he hasn't been himself, and when I asked him about it he said that it's nothing. Dahlia's boys has been sleeping like rocks ever since the girls shared their cribs. I walk out of the nursery and closed the door. I'm going to see Vicky, if that's okay. I smiled up at Amy and said, no problem. Just let me know if you need anything. She gave me a sly smile and walked into the room. Yesterday when Zainian phoned, Amy almost died of embarrassment, but I spoke to her and told her it'll be okay, and when I showed her the condition Vicky was in, she agreed to help. When Zainian got home yesterday, Amy couldn't look him in the eyes and tried avoiding him. I have spent the whole day chasing males out and making sure no one comes onto the top floor. As every male, there were some that took a chance and tried to sneak past me, but I took care of them quickly. So when are we going to talk about what to do next? Zara asked as she came up from behind me. Every plan I thought of ends in war, and that is the last thing I want. They lied and covered the truth. That is their burden to carry. All we want is to know why. From what I have seen at the castle, you won't be able to do much talking. They are getting ready for a war. Well then it's time we do something, isn't it? I stood there looking at Zara and I just realized something. I haven't seen Spike in a while. I asked Zara to stay here at the top and keep the males away, and I walked into Zainian's office, closing the door behind me and locking it. I moved the bookcase and walked down the steps. Spike, you here? I called out and waited for him to answer me. I looked around and it's not as messy as it used to be. The books are put back onto their shelves and the table is almost cleared. Crystal, what a surprise! Spike said as he came around the corner. I just wanted to make sure you are okay. Are you though? Spike looked at me and gave me a sly smile. Yes, I am. I'm just tidying up and putting the books where they belong. Spike doesn't seem okay, he is talking way too fast and he hates cleaning. Spike, what is going on? I asked and sat down on the bottom step. He gave a sigh and came to sit next to me. With his big black eyes he looked at me, and for the first time since I met him I actually saw sadness in his eyes. It doesn't matter what you choose or how you want to avoid a war, it's inevitable. What do you mean? I asked, knowing exactly what he means. You are too good for this world, Crystal, and not everyone will see things the way you see them. I looked at Spike and I'm not sure what to do. I don't want a war because not everyone that will fight is guilty. Innocent blood will be spilled. Spike, can you not tell me what to do? I asked in hopes that he would, but I know he can't. If I could I would give you all the wisdom and knowledge I have, but unfortunately I can't. I rubbed my hands over my face, feeling more lost than I was a minute ago. I can tell you this, you will know what to do when the time is right. Spike said and got up. I looked at him for a second and then made my way back upstairs. Zanian POV. I groaned and sat back on my chair. This is not how I imagined my day would go. I spoke to Louis yesterday in regards to my parents' will and I signed off every right I had to the businesses. I don't want anything from that man nor do I want something from my mother. I phoned Zach and said I will be sending him new documents and I told him that I don't want anything. He tried making small talk, but I didn't have the patience to deal with him. I dropped the call and carried on with my work. I am almost done with the paperwork on my desk. The only thing I have left to do is salary increases. Mr. Black, there is a man on line 2 for you, Stacy said and left my office. I don't know what happened with her, but her whole attitude changed. She went from flirting to all business-like overnight. Not that I mind, but I do wonder what happened. I thanked her and picked up the phone. Hello. Zanian, it's good to hear your voice. I stared at the phone wondering who this is. You might not remember me, but I was your grandfather's partner until he bought me out. Uncle Steward. Just Steward please. You make me sound so old. How are you doing, Zanian? Drowning in work, but surviving. What can I help you with, Steward? Well, I'm hosting a charity ball and I have 2 extra tickets. Can I put your name down and then you can bring a +1? Thank you for the offer, Steward, but I'm going to say no. Okay, just let me know if you change your mind then. We said goodbye and I put the phone down. In the years that I have been running this business he has never called me, so why now? I carried on with my work and at lunchtime Zane and Kyle came in carrying burgers and coffee. I didn't know I was starving until I smelled the burgers. So how is your day going? Kyle asked and looked at me. As slow as ever, why? We saw Stacy, and I must say whatever you did really worked. She is so uptight now she can make a broom jealous. I looked at them lost for a second and then said, I didn't do anything. Zane looked at me and Kyle looked at Zane with a raised brow. You told her Zanian has a girlfriend and 2 daughters, didn't you? Kyle asked Zane and realization set in. Yes, well, someone had to tell her. Zane said and looked at me. He looks like a deer caught in headlights. I just shrugged my shoulders and started eating. When we were done Zane and Kyle left and I got back to work. Halfway through my work my phone rang. I took it out of my pocket and without checking I answered. Hello. Zanian, what time are you coming home? Crystal asked and she sounds worried. I'm not sure why. Because when you do and you find the house upside down, don't ask questions. What is going on there? The mails, they keep coming in, so I have Zara and Tracy helping me keeping them out. Okay, just keep them out until we come home, then we'll move her. I heard something break and growls. I got up from my chair and cut the call. I phoned Kyle and Zane telling them to meet me at the car. I drove home in record speed and ran into the house. It is a mess. A few wolves are passed out on the floor. We stepped over them and ran up the stairs. I saw Crystal grabbing a wolf, choking him until he passes out and then dropped him to the floor. I growled and in my alpha voice chased every male from the house. Even with a female on heat they cannot ignore an alpha. Zane and Kyle helped with the passed out wolves, picking them up and taking them out. I looked at Crystal and she looks exhausted. I walked over to her and threw my arms around her, kissing the top of her head. Later that evening we all had dinner and we started talking about the day and what everyone was doing. Amy joined us in the pack house and she is not feeling shy or embarrassed anymore. Vicky's heat should stop within the next 2 days. Amy told us that Vicky is an alpha's daughter and she got lost running away from her brother. We don't know what pack she is from yet, but we will find everything out as soon as she is better. Everything was quiet and then it wasn't. Tracy screamed and jumped up, Zane getting ready to attack, Zara looked horrified, and Amy just sat there staring open-mouthed. I followed her line of sight and gasped as I saw Spike standing in the door. Zane growled and moved forward, but Crystal jumped up standing between them and Spike. "Everyone just sit down," I said, leaving no room for an argument. "What is that?" Tracy and Amy asked simultaneously. Crystal moved away from Spike and smiled down at him. "This is Spike, and he is a part of our pack," Crystal said and pulled out a chair waiting for Spike to get on. When he sat down he looked around the table at everyone staring at him. "Didn't your mama ever teach you it's rude to stare?" Spike asked in his oh-so-familiar sarcastic voice. "Spike, what are you doing out?" I asked, a bit confused. "Well, I was feeling lonely and I guessed that now is a good time to meet some of the pack, and I was hungry." I looked at Spike and said, "Well, help yourself." He looked at the food and then at Crystal, and between the two of them it looks like they are having a conversation, but without actually speaking. Crystal got up and walked out of the dining room, leaving Spike to smile his $1,000,000 smile. "Where is she going?" I asked Spike. "She is making me my favorite and only she knows how," he said in a tone as if I was supposed to know. Spike looked around the table and I could tell he is starting to get a bit uncomfortable by the way everyone is staring at him. "What are you?" Amy asked and reached her hand out to touch him, but he leaned away from her. "Don't touch what you can't afford, honey," Spike said, and Amy actually blushed. I couldn't help but laugh. "For such a small thing you sure do have a mouth," Tracy said. "It's nice to finally come out," Spike said and just looked at everyone around him. His eyes are sparkling and he truly looks happy. Crystal came in with a plate of food and set it down in front of Spike. He looked at her and just smiled. She took her hand from behind her back and set down a glass of chocolate milk for him. When he started eating, everyone watched in amazement. For a small thing like him, he really does eat a lot. Crystal made him a plate full of half-cooked barbecue ribs. In between bites he actually wiped his mouth. "This is so good," Spike said. Everyone started excusing themselves from the table and left. Zane and Amy was the only two that stayed behind, looking at Spike as if he might go up in smoke. Crystal POV Zanian, "No, don't. She will kill you." I was shouting and screaming at him, but it's like he can't even hear me. He just looked at me and mouthed, "I love you." I watched him take the last 2 steps and my world fell apart. Watching someone you love die in order to save many was not the way this was supposed to go. We had a plan. I ran to Zanian's side, falling down next to him. "Please don't leave me," I cried and begged, but it was too late. I looked up and saw Eliza smiling at me. "I told you, Fox, I will not have a fox and an outsider who knows nothing of being king rule this kingdom." "You killed him!" I shouted and ran towards her, my anger being replaced with hatred. Every step I take closer to her I can feel myself slipping away. When the pain no longer hurts, that's when you become a different kind of monster. "Crystal, wake up! You need to wake up!" My body started shaking and I was losing focus. "Crystal, please wake up!" I jolted upright in bed, almost head-butting someone. My body is sticky with sweat and my heart is beating so fast I can hear it in my ears. I look around me and saw Zanian sitting on the bed looking at me worriedly. I crawled over to him, touching his face and saying, "You're alive." I curled up on his lap and he started rocking me like a baby, reassuring me that he isn't going anywhere. "We have to do something, Zanian," I said and looked up at him. "And we will, but we can't rush into something like this. See? She will kill everyone to keep her place as queen. Is that what you were dreaming? Everyone I love died on that field. Zanian rubbed circles on my back, rocking me back and forth like a child trying to calm me down. I can't help but think that maybe it's a warning. I have never had a dream that felt so real and hit so close to home. I eventually got up and took a shower, feeling a bit better. I dressed in a simple light floral dress that hangs just above my knees with flat shoes. I left the room and made my way downstairs. I could hear laughter coming from the dining room and someone groaning. I stuck my head inside and for the first time I felt like screaming. The place is a total mess, there is food everywhere, the walls, the floor, there is even food on the roof. What happened in here? I asked and everyone looked at me with guilty expressions. Well? I asked, getting impatient. Zane got up from his chair and raised his hands in the air. Well, we can explain. I tapped my foot waiting for him to continue when I saw Spike looking at me. No one is leaving this house until this room is spotless and food-free, I said and looked at every one of the culprits. Even though Spike is so old, he still behaves like a child sometimes. No one said anything, they all just nodded at me and I left. Dahlia has the girls so I don't have to stress about them. Good morning, sunshine, Tracy said from behind me. I looked at her and asked, are you part of the food fight in the dining room? She held her hands up and shook her head no. I just came back from feeding and I walked in there and walked right out again. Yeah, well, they are not allowed to leave without cleaning up. My stomach growled and Tracy smiled at me. She followed me into the kitchen and kept me company while I made something to eat. I don't know if Zanian ate anything, so I just made some scrambled eggs with bacon and toast and put a plate in the oven for him. Zanian POV things is upside down in my head. The more I think, the less of a solution I'm getting. Crystal has me worried with the nightmares she is getting, but they were never this bad. Every plan I come up with ends in war. Maybe a war is inevitable and exactly what our world needs to flush out the crooks and liars. I have made the decision that I will speak to the pack today and fill them in on everything that happened and everything that will happen. I'm sitting in my office looking out the window at the wolves and what they are doing. Tommy is keeping most of them fit and ready for a fight. Some females train, but there is a lot of females that doesn't train, so they will be of no use. The males will need a lot more training if they are to go up against royal guards. A knock on the door pulled me back to reality. Come in, I said and waited for the person to come in. Amy stepped in and Vicky stepped in right behind her. Sorry to bother you, Alpha, but Vicky asked if she can speak to you. Don't worry, Amy. And of course, I said and smiled at the two girls. Amy doesn't avoid me anymore and she is not as shy as she used to be. Vicky came in and Amy left, closing the door behind her. I just want to say thank you for helping me, Vicky said, and she sounds so young. You are welcome, but if you don't mind me asking, from which pack are you? She looked at me and said, I come from the Red Mountain pack, my father is the Alpha. I looked at her confused for a second, because I have never heard of that pack. Where is your pack and what are you doing this side? We are on the other side of the river and I was running from my brother and got lost, then my heat started and I hid myself. If you are ready to go home, just tell me and I will make sure you get there safely. She looked at me and I saw hesitation in her eyes. Vicky, you can stay here if you want, I said and received a bright smile from her. It made me curious as to why an Alpha's daughter wouldn't want to go home. Thank you for keeping the males away from me, she said, and I could hear the sincerity in her voice. I will ask someone to pick you up some clothes and you can stay in the room you're in now for as long as you want, I said and got up from my chair. She ran and jumped on me, hugging me for dear life. What did this girl go through is all I could think about. I hugged her back and walked with her downstairs. I introduced her to some of the pack members and watched as some of the males' jaws dropped. I went to find Crystal and told her about the decision I have made. She agreed and said, "It's about time." We informed everyone of the pack meeting and that everyone should be there. Vicky POV to say I'm relieved would not be a lie but an understatement. There is a reason I ran from my brother and now I don't have to go home. In my pack I am an outcast even though I'm the alpha's daughter I am the most hated person in the pack. My mother was human and when I was born she died giving birth to me. Her pregnancy with me made her sick and weak. My father told her to get rid of me and she refused. I was raised by my mother's sister, reason being my father doesn't want a murder in his house. So I lived with her until I turned 16 and ran away from home. I ran to the city and got a job and I started living my life that was until my brother found me 2 years later and dragged me back home. My father wanted to know if I shifted and I said no, because I haven't. And that is when my hell started. Everyone made fun of me and teased me and I was told if I try and leave I will be hunted and I would regret my decision. I became a pack slave, an Omega. The night of my 18th birthday pain exploded throughout my body and I shifted. The first thing I smelled was my mate and followed the scent. I stood in front of Damien's door, our future beta. He is my mate. He opened the door and his eyes were black. I turned and ran because I knew he will reject me when he finds out it's me. I ran to the woods and that is when everyone started chasing me. I outran them easily and hid behind a rock until I could shift back. The following day Damien found me and he rejected me on the spot, telling everyone that I shifted. My father made me shift to see my wolf and when he did I got thrown into the dungeons. "Why would the moon goddess bless you with a white wolf?" he asked and left me on the cold wet floor. I was in there for a week when my brother came in and let me out saying, "Father said I can let you go." I looked at him skeptically and I knew this was too good to be true. When I stepped outside I was greeted by the whole pack cheering. And now the chase will begin. My father is still set on the old ways. He still believes in the hunt, which happens when a male shifts for the first time, and the chase. Well, the name says it all. It's literally a chase. A wolf runs and the pack chases. If the wolf being chased gets caught, the capturer can decide what to do with it, and if it escapes then the chase is called off. In this scenario I'm the one being chased. They gave me a 10-second head start before everyone else followed. I ran and ran until I could see the ocean and followed along the shoreline until I was sure I lost them, and in the process I got lost. I wandered the woods for days trying to figure out where I am, but I found nothing and no one. I lived off small animals and hid from rogues if I came across any. When my heat started I was sure I'm dying. My whole body was on fire and it feels like my insides are being ripped open. That is how painful it was. I found a cave and that is where I stayed. I knew I will be hard to smell due to the salt in the air. I was scared when someone picked me up, but the skin contact felt so good that I couldn't even bring myself to scream or reject. I just never expected someone to take care of me, keeping away every male. When I met Amy, she was shy and hesitant, but when she started touching me I didn't object. She really did help me and I will never be able to repay any of them. Zanian POV standing in front of the pack I have created about to give them the truth seem much more difficult now than it was an hour ago. Having more than 600 pairs of eyes on me has never bothered me before. I cleared my throat and said, "You might want to have a seat, this will take a while." I watched as many of them sat down and the ones that chose to stand moved to the back. Crystal smiled a reassuring smile at me. After what feels like forever I have finally finished explaining everything and I answered all the questions everyone had without difficulty. They were questions like, are you really the lost prince? Is your father really Odin Kork? So you are going to war against you grandparents? But the most important question, what are you going to do? It took me a minute before I could answer that one, but I eventually did, and I told them, it doesn't matter how we approach them, war will be the outcome. Spike was also there, standing between Crystal and Elia. He has met most of the pack, but there is still a few that's scared of him. All he did throughout this whole talk was nod his head like he knows everything I'm saying. I dismissed everyone, and now things will change. It already started changing. Wolves are now bowing their heads to me. I looked over at Crystal, trying not to get annoyed, but if we do this and we win, then this will be every wolf's reaction to me, and I will have to start acting like royalty. As soon as everyone left, I walked over to Crystal, pulling her to me, burying my head in the crook of her neck, inhaling her scent. All my frustrations eased up and I could feel my mood changing. This took way longer than I thought I would. Well, you are still alive and this is only the beginning, you still need to address the males. When Crystal said that, I couldn't help but groan. I really do have my work cut out for me. Zane, please have all the males meet me here in 1 hour. I looked around me and thought about everything I did, every wolf I have helped, and if we win then we can help many more wolves. You are a great leader, Zanian, and you have every wolf here supporting you and respecting you. I know, Delia, but this is just all happening so fast. It was bound to happen eventually, Zanian. Crystal said and laid her hand on my arm. I looked at her and wished that I could just scoop her into my arms and fly away from here to a place no one has ever heard of. I am not afraid for me, but I am afraid for her, and what if something happens to her? I will never be able to live with myself. Why can't you just stay here until it is over? I asked in a whisper, rubbing my thumb over her cheek. She looked at me and for a moment I saw anger in her eyes, but it was quickly replaced with irritation. She shoved my hand away from her face and said, "We went over this, Zanian, and it is not happening. You have a reason for doing this, well, so do I. I will either fight beside you or I will fight alone." I let out a long breath and rubbed my hand over my face. "You are something else," I said, and watched as her smile grew. An hour later I was standing with the males going over the training schedule and said I will train with them and teach them all I know. Tracy said she will also teach what she knows. The females are to continue training with Crystal, but they will only fight if they volunteer. They will not be forced to fight. We have a total of 400 male wolves and it is not nearly enough. I know I won't get help from any packs around here. A dead end is fast approaching, I thought, and watched as Crystal walked over to Zane. When she started speaking to Zane, I saw him stiffen and then relax. He nodded his head and then said, "Tracy left, she will be back tomorrow." Crystal blew me a kiss and then left. Crystal POV, everything is happening so fast. Yesterday no one knew anything and today they know everything. We didn't even have a plan yesterday and today we do. I mean, how much crazier can the day get? When the males started coming to the field, Tracy walked up to me and laid her hand on my shoulder. "This is not nearly enough wolves to take on the kingdom." I could hear the concern in her voice and I share that concern, because I know we will be outnumbered. I know someone who owes me a favor. That got my attention. "What do you mean?" "Before my parents threw me out, I was friends with a very powerful vampire's son. He was like a brother to me. I helped him get away from his father and start his own life." "Do you know where he is?" "Yes, and I know he will help without getting my family involved." I smiled at her and said, "Well then, do what you have to do, we will take every bit of help we can get. Just tell Zane I will be back tomorrow." "Sure. Just be safe and come back in one piece." If it wasn't for my wolf eyesight, I swear she made herself invisible, but she was just using her vampire speed and took off towards the woods. I went to tell Zane, leaving out some of the details for later. If she says she can help, then I believe her. Delia won't be fighting, she will be staying here with the babies and the others. Jeff will also stay behind because he is the only doctor this pack has. As for the rest, well, that is still open for discussion. The males will fight, but the females won't be forced. As for me, well, I will fight. This became personal when I saw how they killed my mother in cold blood. Zainian tried talking me out of it, but I will hear nothing of it. He is fighting for his birthright, and I'm fighting for my mother, and for the future of our kinds and species. Tracy POV. I thought about this for a while now, and I never wanted to get anyone involved in our business, but when the males started coming onto the field I realized that they will not be enough to take on the kingdom. No matter how strong Zainian and Crystal are, they won't be able to protect everyone and themselves. I walked over to Crystal and told her my plan, but the problem is I now have to face lost memories and old feelings. Having a mate now doesn't erase the fact that I have a past, a very hot, juicy, and steaming past. I will ever cheat on Zain, I will never even think about it, but how will he react if he meets my first love? My mind started wondering and scenarios started playing off in my head of how this can go. They can either shake hands or they try and kill each other. Knowing myself, I will make sure that the first option is the only one they have. I was never planning on seeing Julian ever again, but we need his help now and he really does owe me a favor. I could have just used teleportation if I wanted to, but here I am running and thinking and the two doesn't go together. Looking up, I stare into two iron gates shaped in the form of two wings almost 10 feet high. I don't know what to do. Should I knock? Should I yell? I haven't seen him in a very long time. I looked around for a bell or something, but couldn't find one. When I looked up, someone was looking at me. I almost jumped out of my skin, and if my heart was beating I'm sure it would have exploded. Holy Mother of! You scared the crap out of me. What can I help you with? Came the man's reply. I'm here to see Julian, please, tell him ditto, he'll know who I am. I told the man and he ran to who knows where using vampire speed. Flashback. Why do you never say I love you, but always reply with ditto? Julian asked, dragging his hands through his hair looking like a Greek god. Because when I do say I love you, I want to say it to someone I will be with forever, and ditto means me too. Well, I will take what I can get from you then, in fact I think that will be your new nickname. From now on I will call you Ditto. Julian said and threw me over his shoulder, slapping me and threw me onto the bed. I laid with my head on his chest, tracing circles around his tattoos. Having him shirtless is like having a viewing in my own private art gallery. He has so many tattoos and each one has a meaning, something important that happened and he wants to remember. My personal favorite is the angle and devil dancing. He said that it reminds him of us, the day we met. Present. Snapping fingers brought me back to reality and I couldn't help but smile at the memory. I looked at the person and my smile fell. Follow me and I will take you to him. The man said, and I still don't know his name. You know you are very rude, you don't ask my name, you don't tell me yours. You speak as if it bores you and you don't even have enough manners to say hello. I said and saw the way his eyes hardened and his face was void of any emotion. Well, next time I will remember to set up a tea party. He said and I burst out laughing. His sarcasm is almost as good as mine. He looked at me funny and I could see a smile wanting to form, but he keeps it at bay. You can smile, you know. It won't tear your face muscles. I said and winked at him. Well, aren't you quite the flirt? I heard someone say and looked up. I stopped dead and swallowed hard. I was staring at Julian in his full 6.8 feet gorgeousness. This is so not fair. I thought to myself and licked my lips. The years did nothing but make him even hotter if it was possible. His flawless golden brown skin still has a natural glow and his muscles looks bigger in that white button-down shirt he is wearing. I looked up at his face and his features is still sharp and flawless, straight nose, high cheekbones, sharp jaw and oh such kissable lips, lips that I have tasted many times over. What am I thinking? I have a mate now. I scolded myself and managed a small, "Hello Julian. It's been a long time." I looked into his blue-green eyes and remembered how I used to get lost in them. Yes, it has been ditto 300 years to be exact. He said, and I could feel my inside cringing at the sound of his voice, still as rough and deep as ever. I looked down at the ground, took a deep breath and then looked up. "I need your help, please," I asked, and he just stared at me. The way he is staring feels like he is looking straight through my soul. No letter, no note, not even a goodbye. "We knew it'll end eventually and you found your mate the day before. I could smell her on you, so I made the choice. I knew you couldn't. You could have at least gave me a choice, ditto. I couldn't because I knew you'd choose me and I couldn't promise to do the same when I found my mate," I said, and saw the confusion in his eyes. "You rejected your mate and you never came to find me. Do you even know who my first mate was?" "Everyone knows, he is the reason you got banned, isn't it?" I didn't like where this conversation is going to, so I just nodded my head and said, "I wasn't sure if you were with your mate or not, and I didn't want to cause trouble." "Well, no need to worry, my mate died during the mating process. Turns out she was a weak human girl stuck in the body of a grown-up." I gasped at that and looked up at him. "I found my second mate, Julian," I said, and all I received was a smile from him. A crooked smile that means danger or business. "I know, I noticed the smell and the mark on your neck," he said, and walked closer to me. He put his thumb and finger on my chin and lifted my face so I can look at him. He moved his thumb over my bottom lip and I could see his eyes darkening. "Does he make you feel as good as I once did, ditto?" he asked in the lowest, deepest, most seductive voice. "Zane POV, where is she, Crystal? It's been 2 days and she is not back." I asked Crystal, but the answer stays the same. "I don't know, Zane, she hasn't phoned anyone," Crystal said and laid her hand on my shoulder. "She is strong, so she'll be okay. I know you are worried, but taking it out on us isn't going to bring her back quicker. All she said when she left is she has a friend that can maybe help lift our numbers." I looked at her and just nodded my head. I didn't tell anyone this, but the first day she left I felt a slight pain in my chest, and from what I've heard that only happens if your mate cheats on you, but I know Tracy and I know she would never cheat on me, that is why I'm so worried. Zanian finally told us what is going on, but now things are changing. Training is going to be more brutal and more aggressive, because every male would now want to prove themselves to Zanian. "Have you seen what is happening outside?" Zanian asked me as he came into the kitchen. "Okay, yes, the kitchen is my hideout. Everything I need is in here, so I don't even have to walk up and down the whole time." "No, I haven't. What's going on?" I asked, feeling a bit confused. Zanian took hold of my arm and pulled me outside. To say I was shocked would be an understatement. My jaw is practically hanging on the floor. It looks like a kid's party: slip and slides, jumping castles, trampolines, balloons, 3 huge blow-up swimming pools. In the far left side there are about 6 tables with booze, and to the right tables full of snacks, and I mean anything you can think about. I spotted Kyle and I should have known he would be the main culprit. I walked over to him, Zanian following slowly behind me. "Kyle, what is all this?" I asked, moving my hands around to make my statement more clear. "Well, seeing that we will be very busy for the next few months, we won't have time to have some fun, so we have 3 days to have fun and a 4th to recover, and then training starts on Monday," Kyle said in such a tone that Zanian stepped up and said, "It's only Wednesday today, so are you planning on partying right through to Saturday night or Sunday morning?" Kyle took a moment to think and then said, "Well, we're all partying for one, even you, Zanian, and those who wants to sleep are free to do so, but everything will be gone Sunday morning. Kyle rubbed his hands together. He really does look like a small boy. I thought as I looked at him, remembering how excited he would get if he gets a new toy or something. Zainian looked at him and then left. As for me, well, I'm still standing here shocked. Kyle snapped his fingers in front of my face and said, "If you just gonna stand there, you might as well help." I smiled and lifted my hands up and retreated slowly, then I turned around and ran away. Tracy POV. I couldn't sleep knowing that Zane would have felt something yesterday. I'm still sitting on the bed hugging my knees to my chest. What must he think of me? Is he angry? Is he hurt? Will he reject me? I couldn't deal with everything I'm feeling and all the unanswered questions in my head. I didn't know Julian is going to kiss me, and the worst part is when he did, I didn't even push him away, or slap him. I kissed him back. I never meant to, but it's like my body just took over and now I don't know what to do. I love Zane, he is my mate, but I also love Julian, he will always be my first love, and now it seems that he still is. Silent tears are running down my cheeks. What am I supposed to do? Is it even possible to love two people at once? Why is this so hard? I thought these feelings died 300 years ago, but I was wrong, so very, very wrong. I picked up my phone and saw that I have 7 messages from Zane since I left 3 days ago, but nothing for today. Does that mean he? I couldn't even finish that thought. I opened his messages and they went like this: "You just left without saying goodbye. Where are you anyway? Crystal said you have a friend that can help. I hope he does. I miss you already. The bed is cold without you here. Good night, baby, sleep well and I will see you tomorrow. I love you." I read the messages again and then decided to send him one and test the waters. "I wish I could be sleeping next to you, having you hold me and tell me everything will be okay, and I'm almost done here, we'll be home tomorrow." I sent the message and realized I didn't say I love him. I switched my phone off and got off the bed. I got dressed in tight black jeans and a white shirt that one of the girls here is borrowing me. I need to get this done so I can go home. I left my room and went in search for Julian. I finally found a man and asked him where Julian is, and he showed me to Julian's room. "You are playing with fire, Tracy." I scolded myself, and yet I couldn't stop myself from knocking. "It's open." Just the sound of his voice has my body reacting and my mind going blank. I opened the door and at that moment I wish I didn't. Julian was standing next to his bed with a t-shirt draped over his shoulder and water dripping from his upper body. Would I be called if I wished that I was the water drops dripping off his body, or worse, catching them with my tongue? I stood there staring openly at his perfectly shaped abs and all his tattoos. Unconsciously I licked my lips and my legs felt like jelly. Julian cleared his throat and I broke from my trace. I could kick myself for feeling like this. I have a mate. Why don't you just come in and close the door? That way you can stare all day and at least have some fun in the process. Julian said in a dangerously low voice. I looked him in the eye and realized he was serious and the offer is tempting, but I came here for a reason. I shook my head to clear all the thoughts and said, "I came here for a reason, Julian, and you said we can talk today. I really need to get home." I looked at him pleadingly and all that got me was a nod. "Okay, we will do this your way then, if you answer my one question." And I knew what that question is, I just couldn't bring myself to think of it. Julian stepped closer to me and leaned in a bit. My breath hitched and my palms got sweaty from having him this close to me, his scent surrounding me like a comfort blanket. "Do you love me?" Julian asked and my eyes snapped up to his. Why is he doing this to me? He know I have a mate back home. "Julian, please." I silently begged. "Answer my question, Tracy." Julian said, and it's the first time he uses my real name. A tear fell from my eye and ran down my cheek. I never came here for all of this, I came here to get help, and in the process I might lose my mate. I couldn't speak, couldn't utter a single word, fearing I might break down or run into Julian's arms for comfort, so I just nodded my head. Then be with me, stay here with me, and I can make you happy, I can give you what you want most in this world. A family. It's not that simple, Julian. And I have a mate. Why can't it be simple? Do you love your mate? I came here because I need your help, and yes, I do love my mate and I love you, and this is all just so confusing. I said, and I could feel myself getting frustrated at Julian and myself. Okay, we can talk about the help you need, but then when the time comes I will have you beside me again, and I don't care how. Julian said and walked away from me. The thing that I always loved about Julian is when he says he wants something, he always got it, and it doesn't matter how. And now he laid it out in the open. I left his room feeling worse than I have when I walked in. Zane is Julian's complete opposite. He is quiet, easygoing, gentle, but sometimes too serious. I know now what I have to do. I thought to myself and waited outside until Julian finally joined me. Julian POV: I have spent 300 years trying to forget about Tracy, and like a ghost from the past she came knocking on my door bearing the mark of someone else. At first it made me mad to see her after 300 years, knowing I still have feelings for her, but now she just set a challenge without knowing it. I kissed her just to make sure of something, and when I kissed her the whole word faded away and the spark is still there. I didn't tell Tracy, and the minute I found out I hid it. Tracy is my second chance. And it doesn't make sense because she has a mate and she is claimed by him, so how can she be my mate? Hiding this from her is killing me, but I know if I tell her it will kill her. I have never seen her cry in all the years we've been together. I have never seen her cry. I could see she has been crying the whole night, and it broke my already dead heart. She left my room and I could see the turmoil she is in, and I could see the pain behind her eyes. All I wanted to do is pull her into my arms and lock the door. If she leaves again I might not make it. It took everything we had and every resource we could get to help us get me away from my father. I didn't want to be associated with him and the crimes he did. I couldn't just leave because he threatened to have me killed, so Tracy and I came up with a plan. I died in the process, but it worked. I got buried, and that was the end of Julian Carmelo, at least that is what they thought. 2 days later I stood up from the grave, and the first face I saw was Tracy's smiling at me. We built a life together and she helped me build my own coven, keeping me off the radar until a few years later my father died and I was finally free. His business was passed down to my sister, but she didn't want anything to do with it, and that is when I came back from the dead. I took over the business, making it legal, paying back all the money my father stole and the taxes he evaded, and so much more. Everyone knew about the Carmelo family and our track record, but I'm known for my good deeds and the good thing I'm doing, not the bad things my father did. When I found my mate I knew I didn't want her, because I had already found my forever. I went to reject the human, but couldn't bring myself to do so when I saw the pain her eyes were hiding. I went home and the next day Tracy was gone, left without a trace. I spent years looking for her only to find that she has been banished from the vampire kingdom for rejecting her mate. I always thought she will come back to me, but she never did, and I've spent 300 years waiting. I'll be damned if I let her go for a second time. Following her scent I found her sitting outside, and the way the sun caught her face made my breath hitch. She has always been a beautiful woman, but now she is breathtakingly gorgeous. Her hair is longer and a darker shade, her eyes still hold a mischievous glint, and her smile can make a room stare in awe. I never loved poetry, but when I look at her it's all I can think about. I can write poem after poem about her and it will still never be enough to explain how I feel. I walked closer to her and sat down next to her. What do you need my help with? I asked and looked at her. At first she was quiet and then she started talking. I must say I was very intrigued by the story she was telling. It held my attention from the start to the finish, and when she was done telling me I could feel her sadness. If we don't get more help, the werewolf kingdom will stay corrupted and the future of the species will be in danger. I looked over at her and realized something. Your mate is a wolf. That is why you don't talk about him, because mating between two species is forbidden. I said and saw the tears in her eyes. She lowered her head into her hands and I could see her sobbing softly. I didn't know that things were this bad and she was caught in the middle. I moved closer to her and pulled her to me. For once she didn't fight me and allowed me to just hold her and comfort her. I do have one of the largest covens, consisting out of more than 5,000 vampires, pure bloods, and changelings. Tracy POV, what is happening to me? First I kissed him, and then I let him hold me while I'm bawling my eyes out, and now I wake up in his bed. And the worst part is it doesn't even feel wrong. It feels the same as if I'm waking up next to Zane. As I'm lying in bed I look up at the ceiling and I can't help but feel like I'm cheating on Zane. My mind is saying I'm not, but my heart is saying I am. I subbed my hands over my face and gave a loud sigh. What are you thinking about so much? I heard Julian asking from beside me in that just woke up husky voice. And I realized how much I have missed his voice. I look at him and found him staring at me intensely. I just can't help what I'm feeling. I have a mate back home and yet here I am in your bed and it doesn't even feel wrong. I said and turned my body so that I can look at him. He took a strand of my hair and started playing with it, rubbing it between his fingers. When he looked at me he looked serious. Would it help if I tell you that this isn't wrong? What do you mean? I asked, and all that got me was nothing, forget about it. He rolled out of bed and walked into the bathroom, closing the door, leaving me even more confused and restless. When he came back he was showered and dressed in dark blue jeans and a grey shirt. Go have a shower and meet me downstairs, I want to go speak to your alpha before I make any promises. He said, and everything about him changed. He was cold and stern, even his voice was flat and his face had no emotion. I can't explain the feeling, but I am definitely feeling something between hurt and disappointment. I got out of bed and did as I was told, taking a shower and dressing in my own clothes that has been washed and dried for me. As I walk downstairs I can hear hushed voices and it's too soft for me to hear from all the way up here. As I take the steps I admired the art along the wall by the stairs. It looks like the Carmelo bloodline all the way from the beginning. The earliest one is dated almost 3,000 years ago and it is a woman. Here you are, I've been waiting for you. Julian said, and I didn't even hear him come up. I point at the painting and ask, who is this? Julian looked at the painting and then at me. It's my mother. I gasped and covered my mouth. She is more than 2,000 years old. I half-whispered, yelled. Julian smiled at me and nodded his head. My mother is 2,800 years old, my father when he died was 2,200 years old, and I will be 1,600 shortly. I stared at him open-mouthed and I couldn't believe that his bloodline is that old. Usually only royals can get that old. Don't look so surprised, ditto. Well, I am. How did she manage to get that old? She is an ancient. I said and looked at the painting again. The picture of her doesn't look older than 30. You don't know your history, huh? He asked and raised a brow at me. I looked at him confused for a moment and then he said, I will tell you everything you want to know when you are ready and things have settled down. Julian said and took my hand, pulling me downstairs with him. Julian, you can't do this to me. I said when we stopped by the door. Do what? He asked, giving me a sweet innocent look. I sighed loudly and didn't say anything. He looked at me and asked, "How far is the place?" "I'm not running again. How about I just teleport us back?" I asked in a no-arguing tone. I stepped closer to him and took his hand in mine. For the first time I noticed the faint sparks and dropped his hand, looking at him startled. He looked at me and I couldn't find anything telling me that he felt it too. His face is set in hard lines and his eyes aren't giving anything away. When I took his hand again there was no sparks, so maybe it was just my imagination. I shrugged my shoulders and teleported us out of his home and onto the pack grounds. "What in the name of, is going on here?" I asked out loud, standing rooted to my spot, unable to move. I looked up at Julian and his expression is almost mirroring mine, except he has a glimmer of amusement in his eye. "This looks like one huge kids' party, wolves running and sliding, water splashing, and the place reeks of alcohol." I was still in shock watching the scene in front of me when I was thrown over someone's shoulders. When I grabbed the person's back I could feel sparks and knew it was Zane. I wanted to fight knowing that Julian is here and this is not what I wanted him to see, but I didn't. I just held on for dear life when I felt Zane going down. He let go of me and I slid down to his torso so that he can break my fall. He went down and I landed on top of him with a very loud oomph. He burst out laughing and brought his thumb up to my cheek, rubbing small circles. I looked into his eyes and leaned down, kissing him deeply. He threw his arms around my waist and crushed me to him. "I really missed you," he whispered against my lips. I stood up and helped him to his feet. "I missed you too," I said and hugged him. He was so warm even though he is dripping wet. I forgot all about Julian for a moment and then, as if on cue, I heard his voice behind me. "You okay, Ditto?" I turned around and smiled at him, nodding my head. I looked at Zane and he was looking at Julian up and down, but not in a bad way. "Zane, this is Julian." "Julian, this is my mate Zane." I introduced the two men and they actually smiled at each other. I couldn't find any jealousy or anger on either one of their faces and that really left me confused. Zanian POV: I get that they want to have fun one last time, but what if Tracy comes back today and whoever she brings will see all this and they will think we are not serious enough? Zanian, you have to calm down. Give them their 3 days. Kyle said everything will be gone Sunday morning and training starts on Monday. Crystal, what if someone comes here and sees this? Zanian, take a breath and calm down. They are not going to pack up and you are going to make them. Now when you have had your little tantrum, come out and come have some fun. Crystal said, and that was the end of the conversation. She walked out of the room, leaving me alone. I know I am being a bit harsh, but am I seriously the only one trying to be an adult here? They have been going since last night and they haven't stopped. Kyle said there will be a huge barbecue tonight and a bonfire for whoever is feeling for marshmallows. The only ones that had sleep last night is the kids, if they could even sleep. Leo and Tristan have been sleeping with Isabella and Hazel for the past few nights. I left the room and went back outside, looking as the madness is unfolding before my eyes. Males are running, chasing the females with water guns. I mean, this really does look like a kids' party and I am curious to know why Kyle chose this specific theme. A circle formed and people kept shouting, "Dink, drink, drink." I stepped closer to see what is happening and when I got to the middle I saw Crystal drinking shot after shot without even taking a breath. I stared dumbfounded while she is looking at me and taking her next shot, only pausing to smile. SE double tapped the last shot glass and said time. Kyle showed her the watch and it read 1 minute 10 seconds. Crystal looked at me and said, "I challenge Zanian to beat my time." And she winked at me. I wanted to say no, but that is what she is expecting, so I stepped forward and into the small clearing by the table. "Let's do this," I said and watched as the crowd circle got bigger. Okay, the rules are 1. You are not allowed to use any of your gifts, especially speed. 2. You have to drink 100 shots trying to beat your challenger's time. 3. You are not allowed to breathe while you do the shots. If you can't hold your breath anymore, then you have to stop drinking, and if you can't finish, you lose. The challenger then decides what happens to the loser. 4. If you take the last shot, you have to double tap the glass or you get disqualified. Kyle said as he is looking at me, and Crystal already started pouring the shots. I looked around and I can do this, hopefully my breath won't let me down. Did anyone lose yet? I asked and wish I didn't. Kyle looked at me and nodded his head, pointing over my shoulder. When I looked behind me, Zane was standing on the roof closest to the pool and Jeff was standing beneath him. He jumped off and landed on his stomach in the water. The height and sound made a lot of people flinch and cover their ears. When Zane came up, his chest was blood red and his face looked pained. I looked at Crystal and she just smirked at me. It doesn't matter what, but I am not losing today, I told myself. I'm on shot 89 and it feels like my lungs are ready to explode. Just 11 more and I will be done. I picked up one glass after the other and I almost forgot to double tap. I tapped on the last minute and sucked in a much needed breath, feeling the alcohol rush to my head. I shouted time and Kyle showed me the clock, 1 minute 9 seconds and 9 split seconds. The whole crowd went quiet and then cheers erupted. Crystal looked at me, then Kyle, and he just said, "He beat your time by a split second and that is still defeat." Crystal looked at me and said, "Well then Zanian, what will it be?" she asked me, and I'm still grinning like a fool because I beat Crystal by a split second. I rubbed my hands together, and there is so many things I want her to do, but I will give her something she absolutely hates, and I mean she hates it. "Zanian, why is your face looking like that?" she asked me and took a step back. I looked at her and said, "Well, the winner gets to choose the punishment, right? Is there any limits to the punishment?" I asked Kyle and he shook his head no. "Well then give me a minute and I will be right back," I said and ran into the house to get a blindfold. When I came back out, Crystal was looking at me and I could see worry in her eyes. "Turn around," I said and put the blindfold on her. "Zanian, what are you doing?" she asked, and I couldn't help but laugh. "You will see in a minute, and just remember I really do love you," I said as I'm leading her to the ball pit Kyle rented. One thing Crystal cannot stand is when she is stuck somewhere and cannot come out. "I'm going to throw you into the ball pit. We changed its position so the opening is not on the same spot. You have 10 minutes to try and get out. If you can't, you will be thrown with a bucket of syrup and then flour for a whole hour. So good luck, honey." I picked her up and threw her right in the middle of the pit, making sure her body rotates so that she doesn't know where she landed. When she finally came up, she was looking mad and I knew I would be getting from her later on. After struggling for 5 minutes, she screamed at me saying, "You will not be getting anything from me for the next 2 weeks. Let me tell you, 2 weeks of no s*x is worth the show we are getting. Zanian, I hate you so much right now." "No you don't, you love me," I said in a mocking tone, watching as her cheeks goes more red out of anger. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.